Okay. And then there's a situation with the leader of the Purple Gang.
Michael Meldish.
Now, I went through and actually did some research on these guys. And this is a very interesting group of people. So originally, there was a Purple Gang in Chicago during Prohibition times. And there was a crew in East Harlem that basically named themselves after the Chicago Gang. And this was essentially an organized crime crew that would work with all the different families, but they weren't really
They were almost the sixth family, yeah.
Yeah, they were essentially going to become the sixth family at one point.
But they all got finished, yeah.
Right. So these guys were essentially known for killing and dismembering rivals that control the heroin.
These guys were heavy hitters, yeah. This was back in the day when there wasn't forensics like there is now, and when you wanted to kill somebody, you got away with it back then. And these guys were heavy hitters. Michael, who was the hit victim on that Maddie Madonna wanted killed, he was a killer. He put in plenty of work. His brother Joey, who I was very, very close with, we spent a couple years in prison together, and we spent plenty of time on the street together. And Joey supposedly, I'm not going by him, what he told me. I'm not repeating any of that. What I'm saying is right on the internet, you can see they say 70 to 90, possibly 200 bodies. So these guys were very serious guys, and Joey was, if Joey was home, no one would have had the balls to put a hit on Mike. But, and this is something I really want to bring up about the mob. There is no honor, and they're cowards, because this man, Joey Meldish, is a gentleman, and he's a man and a half. He took his 50 to life like a man and said, fuck it, I'll go die in prison because I'm a stand-up guy. And they decided to put a hit on his brother because he was in prison and couldn't defend him. If Joey was home, they would have never even attempted anything on Mike. Mike screwed up with a boss, don't get me wrong, but even that boss wouldn't have tried anything if Joey was still home. And I want to make that very clear. None of these guys would have had the balls to do that if Joey was still home.
Well, Joseph Coffey, who was the former...
He's the piece of shit who actually put in the newspaper, it's vermin killing vermin, the day that the man got killed. Front page article on a murder. And obviously, my crew was involved with it. They asked me to be a part of it. But I had the utmost respect for the man, and he was a friend. I wasn't as close with him as I was with Joey. But it doesn't matter who you are. There's no reason for a retired police officer to be calling you vermin on the day you're murdered in the newspaper.
Well, yeah. And before that even happened, he spoke about the Purple Gang. He called them a group of mad dog killers.
And they were 100%.
Okay. And the leader of the Purple Gang was Michael Meldish.
Michael Meldish, yeah.
Did you know him personally?
Yeah. In fact, I spent right next door in the strip club. I spent plenty of nights with him there, and also in VIPs. He was a dear friend of ours. He was on record with the boss. It's not like he was on record with just some wise guy. He was around Matty his whole life. He dealt heroin for Matt and Joey DiNapoli, the underboss, Steve, all of them. Like, he was around the top guys in this family. His brother Joe was on record with the Genovese. So they really had their bases covered. They had the Lucchese's, which was like the number 3 in power. And then they had the West Side guys, which are the number 1 in power. They're the cream of the crop. And these guys really had their bases covered.
Well, Michael Meldish, who Joseph Coffey called a stone cold killer.
He wasn't wrong, but he shouldn't have said it. Was
allegedly involved in more than 10 hits himself in the 70s and 80s. He essentially terrorized New York City. And whenever something would happen, there wouldn't be any witnesses because everyone was so scared to testify against this guy.
Yeah. Because these guys, well, first of all, they had a crew, and their crew, the guy Mikey Mancuso I mentioned, who ended up being the acting boss of the Bonanos, he was in the Purple Gang. The guys who were in their gang with them ended up being bosses and captains, not just wise guys. They all ended up getting straightened out. The Meldishes were part German, so they couldn't get straightened out. But the work that they did turn people into bosses and captains. And their crew was full of all up and comers in the 70s. And by the 80s and 90s, these guys were the bosses and captains that were running everything. They were very well connected.